Okay, so we've got a 4-meter flagpole that casts a 6-meter shadow at the same time that a 24-meter building. Oh no, sorry, the building's unknown. The shadow is 24. Okay, so if it's at the same time of day, the angles will be the same. So then that means that we just set up a proportion. So 4 to 6 equals x to 24. We can reduce this to 2/3. So then we get 2 times 24 is 48 equals 3 times x. So then x equals 16 meters. Okay, how can you use similar triangles to measure the width of a canyon? Well, you can set it up to have 2 right angles, and then you have 2 vertical angles over here. So by AA similarity, the 2 triangles are similarity. And then you could just set up a proportion in order to find the width of the canyon. Okay, so this diagram shows that squares are part of every single other shape. So squares have the rhombus property, the rectangle properties, and the parallelogram properties. Okay, so rectangles is completely inside the parallelograms. So that means that rectangles have all the parallelogram properties, but not all the rhombus properties. And then similarly, rhombuses are entirely inside the parallelograms, so the rhombuses have all the parallelogram properties as well. Okay, so given this is a parallelogram, well, one thing we know about a parallelogram is that the diagonals bisect each other. So 3a minus 7 equals 2a. So solving for a, we get a equals 7. Okay, so 3 times 7 minus 7 is 14. And then 2 times 7 is also 14, so that checks out. WV and VY will also be congruent to each other because this diagonal got bisected. So b plus 8 equals 5b. Subtract b. Divide both sides by 4. So we get b is 2. So then 5 times 2 is 10, and then 2 plus 8 is also 10. All right, so, well, first they ask for congruence. XW as the left side is congruent to the opposite side, which is YZ. XY is congruent to the bottom side, which is WZ. XV is congruent, so remember the diagonal gets bisected, so XV is congruent to VZ. And then WV, again, this diagonal got cut in half, so WV is congruent to VY. Okay, so XV plus VZ, well, so 14 plus 14 is 28. And then, okay, WY minus WV, so WY, the whole diagonal is 20, minus this 10 is 10. Okay, so measure of WXY. Try this one. Okay, so this is actually, we know that opposite angles of a parallelogram are congruent. So remember, we're looking at the entire angle here before it gets split by the diagonal. So this is congruent to the opposite angle, which means that their measures are equal. So we can call this one YZW. Okay, and then what is the measure of WXY plus XWZ? So this angle plus this angle. So these are consecutive angles, which means that they are supplementary and add to 180 degrees. Okay, so given this is a rectangle, measure of angle 1 is 70 degrees. Okay, well, I know that this is a right angle, so 70 must be plus 20 to get to 90. Okay, then I know that for a diagonal, for the rectangle, the diagonals are congruent, meaning that all four little pieces here are congruent because both congruent diagonals are bisected, so they get split into even pieces. And then I know that the angles opposite congruent sides are also congruent. So because this 70 is opposite here and this is equal, I know this angle is also equal. Okay, so oh, they actually already told us a measure of angle 7. Okay, measure of angle 3. So again, if this opposite is 20, this opposite must also be 20. Okay, so then 20 plus this equals a right angle of 90, so angle 4 must be 70 degrees. Again, opposites, these add up to 90. Okay, so now working with this triangle, we know a triangle has 180 degrees, so we've used up 40 degrees so far, so 180 minus 40 leaves 140 degrees left over. And we could do the same thing here, or we could use vertical angles. Alright, so now they tell us that CN is 15 units in length. Well, I know that the diagonal is bisecting, so that means that CL is also 15. And then I know that the diagonals are congruent to each other. So this is 15 and this is 15. Okay, they also ask for the entire diagonal. KM is 15 plus 15 is 30. And then LN, or NL, so again 15 plus 15 is 30. KN, okay, that one's actually pretty tricky. We'll come back to that. So NM over here, well, we're going to have to set up a right triangle. So if I draw in this, so let me draw that off to the side. Okay, so we've got a right angle. Here's M, here's C. So I know the hypotenuse is 15. Oh, sorry, I'm using the wrong right triangle. Okay, we actually want to use so this was given to us as 16. So then we know that opposite sides of a parallelogram are congruent. So NM is also 16. Okay, so to do KN, we're going to focus on, say, this triangle over here. Okay, so this is a right triangle. We know that because it shares this corner with the rectangle, this is a right angle. So if I draw this off to the side, so LM I don't know, I'll call that X. I know that this diagonal is 30, and I know that this short leg is 16. Okay, so I need to do the Pythagorean theorem. Oops. Okay, so subtract 256 from both sides. and square root both sides. So square root of 644 turns out to be 2 radical 161, which is approximately 25.38. Okay, so given this is a rhombus with dm being 24, so we know that it's still a parallelogram, so this 24 gets cut in half, and dl is 13, and we know that for a rhombus all 4 outer sides are congruent. Okay, so OM is 12, dp is 13. So now for the angles, we know that for a rhombus the diagonals are perpendicular, so DOL is a right angle of 90 degrees. And sorry, they also told us that measure of LDO is 43 degrees. Okay, so for this top triangle, we've got 2 out of the 3 angles. 90 plus 43 is 133. And then we know a triangle has a total of 180. So 180 minus 133 is 47 degrees for angle DLO. And then DML is down here. Okay, well I know that for a rhombus the vertex angles get bisected. So this angle got cut in half. So if this half is 47, this half is also 47. And again, I know this is a right angle because the diagonals are perpendicular. So now 47 plus 90 is 137, and then subtract that from 180 to get 43 degrees for DML. Okay, MATH is a square, so MA is 8, and all sides of a square are congruent, so AT is also 8. Measure of HST. Okay, so remember a square is still a rhombus, so the diagonals bisect each other. Okay, MAT, we know that a square, like a rectangle, has 90-degree vertices or vertex angles. Okay, so if HS is 2, then HA, well, the diagonal gets bisected, so if this is 2, this is also 2. So H to A is 2 plus 2 is 4. And we know that a square is like a rectangle and that the diagonals are congruent. So if HA is 4, then MT is also 4. Okay, and then angle HMT. So we know that, first of all, the entire corner here would be 90 degrees, but then like a rhombus, the angle gets bisected into 2 equal pieces. So half of 90 means that both pieces are 45 degrees.